رحيم. اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور عثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهموم قد كشفتها، وعثرة قد أقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها، على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه، ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه، ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يداه، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه، ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما. إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير، مع حاجة بي إليه عظيما، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي، وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي، وصفحك عن ظلمي، وسترك على قبيح عملي، وحلمك عن كثير جرمي، عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي. أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك، وأريتني من قدرتك، وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت أدعوك آمنا، وأسألك مستأنسا، لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك. فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك، ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب. إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك، كأن لي التطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك. فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى، تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله، ولا شبيه يشاكله، ولا ظهير يعاضده. قهر بعزته الأعزاء وتواضع لعظمته العظماء، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أناديه، ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصيه، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازي. فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني، وبهجة مونقة قد أراني. فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه، ولا يغلق بابه، ولا يرد سائله، ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين، ويرفع المستضعفين، ويضع المستكبرين، ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها، وترجف الأرض وعمارها، وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق، ويرزق ولا يرزق، ويطعم ولا يطعم، ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى، وهو حي لا يموت، بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك، أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. وصل على صبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي، حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكتك المقربين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك، استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا، يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملناه، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغناه. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، وأعزز به ذلتنا، وأغن به عائلنا، واقض به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وأنجح به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، وأعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، وأعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا، وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا، وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله، وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله، وبضر تكشفه، ونصر تعزه، وسلطان حق تظهره، ورحمة منك تجللناها، وعافية منك تلبسناها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صل على محمد وآل الطاهرين.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to have another session, of course, and we will have, I was mistaken for yesterday for saying that today's the last session. We do actually have one more. Tomorrow will be the question session. So just wanted to clear that up. And with that, of course, we want to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as to follow us on our Instagram so that you can be up to date with all our programs. And without further ado, please welcome Sheikh Ahmad Bazzi with a loud salawat. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أحسنت حبيبي جزاك الله خير. May Allah bless you. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم ولعن عدوهم بحق الزهراء يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My brothers and sisters, may Allah accept your a'mal, accept your salat, accept your fasting in these blessed nights. And then may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those who truly succeed in Shahr Ramadan and are not the losers in this blessed month. بحق Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. For the love of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. Today, my brothers and sisters, I want to start off with a question embedded in a story. A question that's embedded in a story. The question, my brothers and sisters, is on the most blessed night out of the year, which is Laylatul Qadr that just passed. What was one of the best a'mal to do? What was one of the best acts of worship to do? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you 365 days in the year. 365 days in the year. He has picked one night, and has said that this night is better than 1,000 months. And if you do the calculation, convert 1,000 months into years, you get that 1,000 months is close to about 80 years or so. 80 years. Jamil, so the lifetime of a human being. We can say the average or so lifetime of a human being. More or less. Jamil. So one night that is equal to your entire lifetime. What is the best thing to do on that night? What is the most important thing to do on that night? A lot of different answers that you can start to give right now. But I'll tell you a story and tell you what was the most important thing that we could have done that we will do next year. And to highlight the importance of that thing altogether. But you're telling me, Ahmad, well, Laylatul Qadr has passed. Why tell us a story now? I'll tell you, fair. It's a fair question. I'm not telling you the story because of Laylatul Qadr specifically. Rather, I'm telling you the story to tell you about the importance of this ibadah, this worship, this thing that we take for granted, me and you. Because you're going to be surprised what it is. So what it said, one of the tullab of the Hawza, one of the students in the Hawza, came up to one of the scholars. And I believe, and I may be mistaken. I remember the story, I heard it or read it a long time. But I believe it was Sheikh al-Ansari, who was one of the greatest scholars of his age, who was one of the greatest maraja of his age. He came up to Sheikh al-Ansari, he came up to the Sheikh, and he asked him, Sheikhna, tonight is Laylatul Qadr. What is the best amal, what is the best thing that I can do on this night? What should I do, Sheikhna? Give me advice, advise me. This guy's going to the biggest scholar. He's asking him, Ya Sheikh, what should I do in this night? Best amal, best a'mal. Dua Jawshan. Is Dua Jawshan, according to some riwayat, it is from A'mal Laylatul Qadr. Is it Alif Rak'ah, praying 1,000 rak'at, or 100 rak'at? 100 rak'at, I believe. 1,000 times Laylatul Qadr, rather. 1,000 times reciting Surah Al-Qadr. Which amal is the best amal? And so the Sheikh looked at him and he said, which marhala are you in? So which level in Hawza are you in? As you know, Hawza is split into 3 levels. Muqaddimat, Sutuh, and Bahath Kharij. Muqaddimat is about 4 years. Sutuh is about 5 to 6 years, maybe even 4 years you can do it. If you cram it and you take less classes. And then Bahat Kharij is we're good? Okay. Okay, Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Habib. Afwan. So we were in the middle of the story. So as we said, there are 3 levels in Hawza. We have Muqaddimat, which is about 4 years, Sutuh, which is 5, 6 years, maybe even 4 years if you really, really cram it. And then Baht Kharij, which is essentially unlimited. So the Sheikh said, what marhala are you in? The student, he said, I'm in such and such a marhala, this marhala. And so the scholar, he said, Udrus darsak. The best amal that you can do in this night, go study your dars. Go study the lesson that you took today. Go study. Take the time and study. Was he talking just because he's a marja and he's in Hawza? Was he just saying it for just to encourage the student, or was there more to what he said? When you go to the riwayat are very, very clear that one of the best a'mal of Laylatul Qadr, a night that is equivalent to your entire lifetime, is to attain knowledge, to learn. To learn. Just learn. Pick up a book, read some, learn religious knowledge. Ityanul ilm. Again, you're going to say, Ahmad, Laylatul Qadr is gone. Why tell us now? I'll tell you. I'm telling you now because you know how valuable Laylatul Qadr is. And so by me telling you that in this night that is so valuable, the most valuable thing that you can do is to attain knowledge. That itself, me telling it to you in this way, giving you this equation, equating it in this way, gives value in your mind to reading, to knowledge itself, because you know the value of Laylatul Qadr because you experienced it. After you experienced Laylatul Qadr and understood it for what it was, then I will come and tell you, see that valuable thing, the most important thing to do in that night is to learn, to attain knowledge, so that you can implement this for the upcoming days of your life, my brothers and sisters. You tell me, Ahmad, why? What is it? What is it about knowledge that's so important, my brothers and sisters? Why knowledge? Why is learning equivalent to growth, spiritual growth? What is it? What's the reason? I'll tell you, my brothers and sisters, don't go further than the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Don't go further than their ahadith alayhi salam. Listen to this riwayah. Again, it's a story. So listen to the riwayah in the form of a story given to us in Al-Kafi. In the very, very beginning of the book Al-Kafi, a book of hadith, this riwayah is mentioned. Listen to this riwayah. It said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at the time of Bani Israel, he had a servant. And this servant from the people of Bani Israel, so the time of Musa, that era, before, maybe after a little bit, there was this servant, this slave, this abid we call. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed this slave with an island that this slave was on, and this person, regular person, was on, and he was on this island by himself, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the day and throughout the night. So he was on this island, he was there by himself. Allah ta'ala has blessed him with this life, and he would worship Allah ta'ala on this island day and night by himself. The riwayah says one day, one of the malaika looked down on this person in this island, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala day and night, and he was impressed by what he saw. And so he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show himself, the angel, the reward of that abid on the island. What is this person's reward? Ya Rab, he has devoted himself to you. What is this person's reward? And so Allah ta'ala showed him the reward of the abid. The riwayah says the angel saw that it was insignificant compared to what this abid was truly doing. It wasn't enough. It didn't equal out. Yani if a person dedicates his entire life to worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah ta'ala, for example, puts this person in the second level of heaven, the second level, like near the bottom, you feel like, okay, there's something wrong here. What's going on? Obviously, this person is not sinning because he's all alone. There's no one to sin. There's no one to talk to. There's no one to do ghiba. There's no one. He doesn't have a wife. Doesn't have kids. He doesn't go to work, so he doesn't have money coming in haram, right? There's no means for this person to sin, or very little means for this person to sin. He's alone. So what's the reason? And so the malak, the angel, he asks permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to come down, or Allah ta'ala rather tells him to go down and to be with this man and see for himself why Allah ta'ala is not going to give him the reward that usually you would think that Allah ta'ala would give a person. And so this angel goes down to this island, and he comes in the form of a man. He arrives at the island. The abid, he says salam to the angel that is now in the form of a man. And the angel says, I myself am a abid as well. I'm a worshipper of Allah, and I heard about your worship. And so I want to come and spend a few days with you so we can worship Allah ta'ala together. Jimmy. The angel and the abid then go and they do their a'mal. And the riwayah says, when the morning came up, the angel looked at the man and said to him, this island is beautiful. This island is beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's perfect in every way. The abid looks at the angel in the form of a man and he says, it's actually perfect in every way except one thing. I want you to pay attention. The angel said, what is that? The abid, he said, there's a lot of grass on this island. There's a lot of grass on this island. And it's going to go to waste. I wish God had a donkey. Listen, look at this response. Weirdest response. He said, there's a lot of grass on this island. I wish God had a donkey and we can take care of that donkey for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he can eat this grass that's going to go to waste. Angel looks at this man pretty much the way you're looking at me right now. Like, that's kind of weird. Looks at this man and he says, God has a donkey. Like, what are you saying, man? Like, what's wrong with you? So the angel sort of looks and says, God has a donkey. What do you like? He's questioning. What's going on? He's like, yeah. And he doubles down. This Abi doubles down and says, yeah, if God has a donkey, he can eat the grass and the grass wouldn't go to waste. I wish God had a donkey and we can feed him this grass. Things along the lines of this, like God having a donkey and coming down and eating the grass. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to the angel and says, now do you understand why the reward of this person is low? He says these words, I will reward him in accordance to his intellect. The reward is set in accordance to a person's intellect. Imagine you have two people. The explanation of this riwayah is as follows. Imagine you have two people. Listen, you have two people. A person who's lived in a village his entire life. They're living in this village where everyone in the village believes in Allah, believes in Ali bin Abi Talib, believes in the Quran, believes in Rasulullah being the Prophet, obviously, believes in all of these things. They go to the Hussainiyah every week. They do dua kumail, dua tawassul, and he's been like this from day 0 all the way until he dies when he's 80. Been doing the same exact thing. Same routine. Got married, has kids, taught them well, and all of this from 0 to the day that he died. The same routine. Doesn't sin, doesn't do any of this stuff. This is his routine. As opposed to, and obviously no education, this person in the village, no education. He just works as a fallah, he has crops and he works in the fields. That's his life. Jamil. As opposed now to a person who from day 0 to day 100 or whatever, day 0 to 80 years of age, they go to the Hussainiyah, they pray, they fast, they believe, they do all of the things that they must be doing, the same things that this villager was doing. But they are also reading upon religion, learning. They are reading the opposite side. So they are reading what the Sunnis said. They are reading the arguments against Islam. They are learning what Rasulullah came with in terms of the aqa'id, the beliefs, the ahkam al-shar'iyyah, the laws. They study all of these things. They open themselves to the world. The other guy, the guy in the village, is closed. He's closed. He's closed off from the world. As opposed to the other person, no, he's open to the world. He has internet. He has the ability to sin. He has the ability to obey. And every single time he chooses to obey. And he does all of the things that the village is doing, but also has knowledge. Has knowledge of what is behind the barriers. What is behind the walls from sin, from ideas, from philosophies, from atheism, from Christianity. Has knowledge of what is behind the limits. In your eyes, who's better? The one that's closed off or the one that's open to the world? Through knowledge, through understanding. No human being with a sound mind will tell me the person in the village is better off in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one in the village is safer. Yani that system is safer. You'll have more religious people in that system. Yes, absolutely. Go to the villages of Lebanon, of Iraq, of Iran, whatever. They're the most religious of people, but they're closed off from the world. The whole city is religious. Here in the West, or in more urban societies, to find 10, 15, 20, 30 people that are religious, mind a whole village or a city, to find 30, 40, 50 people that are actually religious, not fake, actually religious. That's hard. These villages, you have cities, like small cities, towns, in the mountains, all religious people. This first system, yeah, you'll get more religious people. The second system, you'll get more valuable religious people. All because of what? That one thing that we take for granted called knowledge. Knowledge. Al-ilm. That's why, my brothers and sisters, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he gives advice to this man by the name of Unwan al-Basri in a famous hadith called Hadith Unwan al-Basri. In this hadith, my brothers and sisters, we have a lot of beautiful messages from the Imam alayhi salam, a lot of enlightening ideas from the Imam alayhi salamullah. This riwayah, my brothers and sisters, from its matan, yani from the meanings that we find in this riwayah, we can benefit. Now, who is Unwan al-Basri? Is he trusted? Is he known? Is the hadith authentic? That is for the scholars to discuss. That's not for us to discuss. But the meanings of this hadith are beautiful and very deep. Very deep. Look what the riwayah says. Listen to the riwayah. The riwayah says this man, Unwan al-Basri, was a Sunni, was not from the Shia, at least at the very beginning. What happened to him later, we don't necessarily know. But in the beginning, he was not a Shia. And he says, I used to go to another teacher by the name of Malik. Who this person Malik is, Allahu Alam, who this individual named Malik is, regardless of who it is. It was another prominent teacher in the city at the time where Imam al-Sadiq also lived. And so he used to say, Kuntu akhtarif ila Malik. I used to go to Malik and learn from Malik a lot. Until one day I went to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. And I asked if I can learn from Imam al-Sadiq. And so Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, I'm a very busy man. I have no time to teach you. Go back to Malik and take from Malik. Learn from Malik. Unwan says, I became very, very sad after hearing this. Became very sad. So I left very sad. And I could not get it off my mind that al-Sadiq alayhi salam turned me away. He says, I went to Masjid Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open the heart of Imam al-Sadiq to me. I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make me from those who take from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam's knowledge. And he says, I went back home and I stopped going to Malik's classes. So I stopped going to classes of Malik. The next day I woke up and I also went to the masjid. I did some ibadat. And I went back to the house of Imam al-Sadiq. I knocked on the door. Who opened the door? One of the servants of Imam al-Sadiq. He says, I want to listen or speak to Imam al-Sadiq. So the servant comes back, and says Imam al-Sadiq is busy. And so he says, I waited on the door until he was finished. I waited for some time until he allowed me to come in. Jimmy. When I came in, I sat in front of him and I spoke to him. I spoke to him. So listen to what he says. فَقُلْتُ السَّلَامُ عَلَى الشَّرِيفِ. I said, As-salamu ala al-Sharif. The word al-Sharif is the honorable one. And it is said anybody from the lineage of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was called al-Sharif. And that's why one of our ulama is named Sharif al-Radi. Sharif al-Radi is one of the greatest ulama. Or Sharif al-Murtada, one of the greatest ulama. Sharif al-Murtada rather. His brother Sharif al-Radi is also a great alim. Sharif al-Murtada is the one that's known. Sharif al-Murtada, for example. Sharif means Sayyid. So anybody that wears a amama or is from the lineage of Rasulullah that we call Sayyid, they still call him Sharif. Jameel. So he says, Assalamu ala Sharif. فقال sorry, عفوا. فجلست فأطرق مليا. Okay. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, Abu Man. He asks, Abu Man, what do they call you? Father of who? So he says, قلت Abu Abdullah, father of Abdullah. قال ثبت الله كنيتك ووثقك يا أبا عبد الله ما مسألته. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, according to the riwayah, prays for this man and he says, what is your issue? And so this man, he says, سألت الله أن يعطف قلبك علي ويرزقني من علمك. I asked Allah Ta'ala to open your heart, to soften your heart for me and to give me from your knowledge. وأرجو أن الله تعالى أجابني في الشريف ما سألته. And I hope that Allah Ta'ala has granted me my wish. So here Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he begins to speak. So please listen. This is for each and every one of us and I'm about to end. I'm going to read for you what the Imam alayhi salam said, explain it, but then I want you to go and think about it. He says, فقال يا أبا عبد الله ليس العلم بالتعلم. Ilm, knowledge knowledge is not learning. Knowledge is not just learning. إنما هو نور يقع في قلب من يريد الله تبارك وتعالى أن يهديه. Rather, it's a light that enters the heart of the person, or that falls on the heart of the person, and the heart of a person that Allah Ta'ala wants to guide. It's a light that falls in the heart of a person, the heart of a person who Allah Ta'ala wants to guide. Ya Aba Abdullah, al-ilm, knowledge, is not just by gaining facts, gaining things from books and stuff. It's a nur, it's a light. So knowledge is a spiritual entity. Knowledge is something spiritual before it's something that's in the brain. It's something in the soul. It's something in the heart. يقع في قلب, in the heart of a person. That's why you find, even in our minds, we can see the difference between someone who is spiritual but ignorant and someone who's spiritual but knowledgeable. And we ourselves can see with our own eyes that this person is at a low spiritual level, the ignorant, and this person is a high spiritual level, the knowledgeable. Although at first thought, we don't see knowledge as something spiritual. Me and you, we don't see knowledge as something spiritual. So knowledge is knowledge. Atheist is knowledgeable and the Sheikh is knowledgeable. But when we make this calculation in our mind, no, we see a vast spiritual differentiation, discrepancy between the two. There is a huge difference between the two. And Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam outlines this by saying, yes, because knowledge is nur. Knowledge is spiritual. فَإِنْ أَرَدْتَ الْعِلْمِ, keeps going. If you want knowledge, فَاطْلُبْ أَوَّلًا فِي نَفْسِكَ حَقِيقَةَ الْعُبُودِيَّةِ. So if you want knowledge, then find in yourself what it means to be a slave of Allah. Ya Imam, knowledge and being a slave to Allah, knowledge in the spiritual realm, knowledge in connecting to God. What's the connection here? He's saying, rather, it is the connection. Knowledge is that connection. وَاطْلُبُ الْعِلْمِ بِاسْتِعْمَالِهِ. And he keeps going, alayhi salam. If you want to be knowledgeable, understand that it's spiritual. If you want to be a better Muslim, simple as this. This is the message from this whole lecture. You want to be a better Muslim? Pray, fast, do all of these things, yes. But learn. Learn. Have a book on the side that you pick up every now and again and you read. Every day, read a page of that book. Let me show you. You have this book. Whatever this book is. This book is called Jawahir al-Kalam. Whatever. Any book. What is it? Maybe 200, 300 pages, let's say. If I read a page a day of this book, as hard as this book may be, and many of the books that you want to read are quite simple books, history books, aqaid books, whatever it may be. Page a day. How long does it take you to read a page a day? 10 minutes? 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Just pick up this book after Salat. After Salatul Maghrib, after Salatul Dhuhr, whatever time is comfortable for you. Read a page. When you flip that page, you flip it. Okay, now I'm on page 169. Close it. That's it. Close the book and put it aside. Done. A page a day. If you do that, every year you'll finish a book. And that's knowledge. You don't like to read. Sometimes I don't like to read. As much as I love spending time in the library, sometimes I just don't want to read. Go online, put a lecture on, and listen to it. You don't want to listen to all of it? I've done that sometimes. I've taken a lecture and listened to an hour-long lecture in 3-4 sittings. 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. In the car, I have to go from the house back home. It takes about 10 minutes or so. If I take the long way, it takes 15 minutes. The scenic route takes 15 minutes. Put a lecture on. It takes me 4 or 5 trips. Put a podcast on, for example. There's religious podcasts or podcasts that I'm interested in that talk about things that I'm interested in. Science, biology, chemistry, physics, astronomy, astrophysics, whatever. But here we're talking about religious knowledge. Listen, read, gain. This brain that you have is a sponge right now. and go to your parents and tell them, Sheikh Ahmad said our brains are a sponge. What did he mean by that? As opposed to when I'm 40 or 50. Let them tell you. When you're 40, 50, 30, whatever, you have so much on your mind. You have so much things that you're thinking about. You don't absorb things the same. You don't absorb knowledge the same. Now is the time to learn. And Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam put this into perspective with one example, and I'll end off for you. Riwayah says, التعلم في الصغر كالنقش على الحجر. I believe this is a riwayah from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. At least it's narrated as so, from my knowledge. Learning when you are young is like writing on a stone. والتعلم في الكبر كالكتابة, I believe, على الماء. And learning when you're old is like writing on water. When you write on water, does anything show? Try writing on a river or on a wave that's coming in. Maybe you're standing in a lake and you're writing, and the water's flowing. Right when you move your hand, you'll make a little bit of a line, but it's gonna go away with the waves. You're not gonna gain anything. Very little will you gain. But when you're young, it's like writing on a stone. And there are things that I remember up until now, Suwar Quran, whatever, things, small little things that I remember learning when I was 8. Surah Al-Nas, Surah Al-Qadr. These, I didn't learn them when I was at Hausa. I came in knowing these things. I learned them when I was 8, 9. Those things you keep. When you say, no, I'll learn later on, no, you won't learn. Trust me, you won't. Pick up a book from tonight. From tonight, if you have a religious library or a bookshelf or something at home that your parents have, or you're interested in a certain genre of book, go on Amazon. Go on Amazon and search up that book. And you'll find it. It's there. Shia, religious, yes, English, yeah, the whole thing. It's there. Order it. $10, $15, $20, whatever. And you'll have it in a couple of days, a week's time. Start reading a page a day. That is the task from now up until next Shahr Ramadan. And if I'm with you next Shahr Ramadan, inshallah, you would have finished the book that you started tonight. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على.
Thank you, Sheikh, for that wonderful lecture. I especially enjoyed the like the analogy you gave for the sponge. I just had a question about I think a lot of people might want to know this too, is what
Yes.
podcast or book would you recommend, since you talked about that? Do you have a podcast, religious one in particular, that you would recommend?
Yeah, actually, there's a podcast by Sayyid Jawad al-Qazwini, I believe it is. I think that's probably one of the only podcasts out there. Let me just get the name for it, if you don't
Sure.
mind. It's like one of the only podcasts, like Shia podcasts, that are out there. I personally, Sayyid Jawad al-Qazwini, Ahsant, yes. So it's called the Qazwini Brothers Show, Sayyid Muhammad Jawad al-Qazwini, where he speaks on many different issues: fashion, news, society and culture, different things. I personally, I get a lot of the religious studies from the Hausa. So I don't necessarily have to watch, a religious podcast. I'll watch the opposite end. So I'll watch sometimes anti-religion things. Sometimes I'll listen to people that are not religious about scientific issues. Personally, I'm a big fan of like Joe Rogan, for example, Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah.
A lot of people know about it. I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan because I'm a big MMA guy. I like MMA and UFC. And I genuinely like the guests that he brings on his show, not all of them, but the scientists and the people of academia that he brings, I like to listen to. It gives me a different perspective, right?
For sure.
So just whatever you are interested in. So if you're going to school for a certain discipline, good. Find another discipline, find something else and listen to that. And for most of us, because we're not in school for religious studies, that other discipline is religion, right? So this podcast is very good. And other podcasts that speak on religious issues, or you just listen to a lecture. Not hard at all. Download the lecture before you leave, or if you have data, put it on YouTube, put it in your car and just listen. And I'm sure there's a lot of traffic in Toronto, and you get stuck in traffic all the time. Do something and listen.
For sure. Thank you for that recommendation. And thank you to everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to stay tuned for tomorrow's session where you can ask questions. And that will be the last session and the last question session. So be sure to be there. And just a reminder, of course, to subscribe to us on our YouTube channel as well as follow us on Instagram. And with that, we thank you for joining us today. We will look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. Wassalam.
صلي على محمد. أحسنت حبيبي، جزاك الله خير.